This is a recording on schizophrenia and shame. And the question is shame hallucinogenic? Research into the causes of hearing voices, formerly termed auditory verbal hallucinations, AVH, has primarily focused on cognitive mechanisms. A potentially causative role for emotion has been relatively neglected. There's a paper that uses historical and contemporary case studies of AVH to tentatively generate the hypothesis that shame can be a causal factor in the onset of AVH. So the experience of shame is the causal factor of auditory verbal hallucinations. The paper argues that 60% of the voices heard by people diagnosed with schizophrenia embodied feelings of shame and guilt. In summary, it says, in summary, shame can be viewed as an involuntary response to an experience of oneself as an unattractive social agent, an undesirable self, or a self that one does not wish to be, which triggers a need to limit possible self-devaluation, self-damage, and loss of status through escape or appeasement. Whereas pride occurs when standards are met, shame, guilt, and embarrassment stem from standards being violated. Shame is closely related to guilt, but can be differentiated from it. In guilt, focus is typically on the person who was transgressed or the relationship that was affected, rather than the self. Guilt pushes us out into the world in an attempt to activate efforts to repair the damage by either reparative action or punishment. In contrast, shame encourages withdrawal and retreat. And eye gaze avoidance is one of the most basic defensive behaviors. This explains why Epictetus wrote that the eyes are the abode of shame. Shame in humans is the equivalent of an animal submission display. Head down, eyes averted, experienced to cause the person to undertake behaviors that de-escalate conflict and avoid further harm. It is part of a primitive system of social defenses that evolved to protect against aggression. Indeed, eye gaze avoidance is one of the most basic defensive behaviors, explaining why Epictetus wrote that the eyes are the abode of shame. It is therefore unsurprising that shame is associated with a desire to hide, and the emotion of shame is hence a social threat detection system warning us that other people are viewing us negatively and may punish us. Experiences of being disgraced, devalued, demoted, dishonored, degraded, discredited, humiliated, ridiculed, shunned, ostracized, or scorned are signaled to us through the emotion of shame, the feeling that there is something flawed, bad, or worthless about us. And that's from Gilbert, 1989, A Spoiled Identity, and Goffman, 1986. As George Orwell put it, my whole life was one long struggle not to be laughed at. What is shame? When we think of threats, we typically think of physical threats. However, threats can take a social form, namely the endangering of our reputation and social standing. Social threats imperil our basic human need to belong and to be valued. They diminish what Gilbert has called our social attention holding power, which Gilbert has defined as our ability to elicit positive attention and social rewards in the form of approval, praise, acceptance, respect, admiration, and desire. This makes such threats a fundamental part of our consciousness and a driver of our behavior. And with that being said, I'm going to switch topics to the virtue of slaughtering and the importance of a quick and calm death. Contrary to popular belief, the act of slaughtering animals can be a virtuous and responsible practice. With experience and deep understanding of the process, farmers become more proficient and ensure a quick and calm death for the animals they raise. This approach prioritizes the animal's well-being and minimizes suffering. Avoiding unnecessary coercion and working with the animal's nature allows for a more harmonious interaction. When farmers honor the animal's role in sustaining human life, they can provide a farm where animals thrive, protected from the harshness of the wild. In return, a quick and peaceful death becomes a sacrifice, solidifying the mutually beneficial trade-off. And I'm going to end this with a quote by Carl Jung. "Envy does not allow humanity to sleep."